You're listening to the RE Social Podcast with your hosts, Andrew and Vince from AnVi Invest. For more information, go to AnViInvest.com. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. It's not to be taken as financial advice.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of RE Social. Today, we have a good friend of ours, the co-host of the Multifamily Takeoff, fellow Californian from San Diego. Welcome to the show, Rich.
Vince, thanks for having me on, my man. I'm excited to be here and excited to dig into this conversation today.
Yeah, man, we just had Sean a few weeks back, and, it was a fire hose off an episode too, man, with him,
Nice. I love to hear it.
Hey, if you want to give our listeners a little bit of background about yourself in, let's say, 60 seconds, how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up middle class. My mom is an immigrant from Taiwan. Both of my parents know the value of working hard and saving your money. I was taught from a young age to go to school, get good grades, go to college, and get a job. And for the most part, that's what I did. While I was going to college, I worked in sales. My first job was selling cell phones out of a kiosk out of the mall before everyone had cell phones. And that was my first taste of what it was like to control or have a little bit of control of your paycheck. And I really excelled at it. And I wanted to sell commercial real estate. Went on to sell cars. And then I thought, man, I want to sell commercial real estate when I got to school. It was 2008 when I graduated. I interviewed at CB Richard Ellis, Grubb & Ellis, which are a couple commercial brokerages. And they both told me, hey, this is not a good time to get into the industry. We love your hustle, but just not a good time to get in. And so I stumbled into an air traffic control position with the government, ended up doing that 11 years. And along the way, I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and thought, man, I got to figure this out and get back into the real estate side, but on the investment side. So at the time I did what, everyone thinks is too risky, or society might tell you is too risky, but I cashed out my 401k and I pulled out a home equity line of credit against my primary residence. And that was my seed money to get started. First deal was 11 units in Cincinnati. Shortly after that, I partnered with Sean and Mike. We JV'd on a 32 unit building in Indianapolis. And those are my first couple of deals. Launched the podcast, as you alluded to, learned how to raise money, and then started taking down some larger deals. Along the way, I started a short-term rental business where we operate and manage short-term rentals and boutique hotels. And now we're buying boutique hotels at this time.
That's awesome, man. I had a quick follow-up questions. I've been writing some notes too.
Sure.
So how did you have the confidence to wipe out your savings of your entire retirement? That sounds insane to someone who does a W-2 job, which is like myself and most Americans.
Yeah, well, I mean, looking back at the time, I was a little bit nervous to do it, but I had spent about 9 months doing nothing but studying and educating myself. So I was reading books, listening to podcasts. I was hosting a networking event in real estate before I even had bought a deal. And so by being around people that were actually buying deals, it gave me the confidence to move forward and the confidence to cash out my 401k, because at the end of the day, yeah, I invested in that thing over a 10-year horizon, and yeah, it grew, but it really wasn't making me wealthy, And so looking at it that way, I kind of felt like it was, I didn't have much to lose. I was risking something that was not really going to make me super wealthy, with an opportunity to grow a big portfolio. And looking back, it was the best decision I ever made in my life.
So you're talking about paying a 10% penalty and on top of that, a 30 to 40%. So you probably lost 40% of your money, right?
Yeah. So you pay 10% penalty to the Fed. And then depending on what state you live in, California, you pay a 2.5% penalty. The rest of it is taxed as ordinary income, which is crazy to me, right? Like, this is your own hard-earned money and time that you'll never get back. And they're penalizing you for accessing your money. You can't touch it till age 59 and a half, which I think is crazy to even think about in the first place. But that said, you pay the penalties. The taxes, I actually deferred my taxes. I asked for an extension. And so I didn't have to pay those taxes for a long time. And depending on when you cash out your 401k, if you strategically cash out a specific time horizon, let's say you cash out your 401k in January of this year, right? 2022, for example. and then you ask for a extension to file your taxes in 2023, you won't have to pay those taxes until October of 2023. That's basically 21 months. That gives you 21 months to figure out how to recoup some of that money to pay your taxes.
That's
And if you're a
cool, man.
betting man and you're betting on yourself, those are some pretty good odds.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you had more than $50,000 because otherwise you could have just taken a loan out, right?
Yeah, I had about $245,000 after the penalties and all that stuff.
Wow, so you were like maxing out every year for 10 years.
I was maxing out. Yeah.
Wow, cool.
Maxing out government match. But even with that, I mean, at the time, I think the max was like 17, 18. Now it's probably 19,000 per year. And then the matching is like another 5,000 or 6,000. So you're looking at about 24,000, 25,000 a year. But over 10 years, that's only $250,000.
Yeah, I always tell people
you can make that off of one real estate deal in 3 months.
Yeah, dude, there's no leverage or anything like that. So I mean, I tell people if you're not going to do anything, just dump it somewhere so you can wait to figure out, like wait to use that money somewhere. But if that is your sole retirement plan, it's not going to be a really good plan. All right, so moving on with your story. So you did that, and then you got the 11 unit and a 32 unit with the boys, right? The 11 unit by yourself, and then the 32 unit. And that I know that story from Sean, from the other podcast. And then that was the big, you flipped it around. So on at the same time, you guys were also buying deals by yourselves too. How did that work out?
Yeah, so I bought the 11 unit on my own, and then when we sold, well, I bought an 8-unit building in Cincinnati, I don't know, last year. And then bought some, like when we sold the 32 unit, we did a what's called a tenants in common, a TIC, which allowed the partners of that entity to 1031 exchange into their own separate deals. And so I 1031 into a luxury property in Scottsdale that I did a full renovation on in order to basically burn into a short-term rental.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you, so we both live in California, as you know, long-term, tenants here with the price to rent ratio, it's not very favorable. Yes, in time, you can increase the rents and you can have a fixed payment. So you can kind of get that spread over time. But so is that the reason why you moved from long-term to short-term to access some cash flow?
The reason I got into short-term rentals, man, was by accident. I really backed into it. So shortly after we had bought the 32 unit building, I had a pre-approval from a local credit union here in San Diego for a no money down primary residence loan. And I thought, well, why don't I go utilize that? If it's no money down, why not utilize it? And so I found a brand new construction condo in downtown San Diego in a pretty good neighborhood. And the HOA would allow for short-term rentals. And so I thought, okay, great. Let me go buy this property. Let me quote unquote live on it for a little bit while I set it up to satisfy the lender. Because when you're signing on a primary residence loan, when you sign those loan docs, you are signing basically saying, I have every intention at the date of the signing to live on the property. Now, what happens after that? Things change. The bank knows, hey, family situations come up, personal situations come up, plans change, and they can't control that. But as long as you're servicing your debt and you have every intentions to live on the property the day of that signing, you should be good to go. Anyway, so I lived on the property for a little bit, set it up, converted it into a short-term rental. I put about $14,000 into furnishings, and that thing just started cash flowing right away. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. The pandemic hit shortly after. And even during the pandemic, that thing was just staying booked. And so I was like, well, what if I can go get another no money down loan, right? And so went and got a pre-approval. And this is 6 months after I bought that first one. They gave me another pre-approval. I went and bought a larger property, a single family house here in San Diego with a ADU in the back. And this couple had bought this property. They had renovated the property. They had built this brand new ADU in the back, fully furnished it. They even put it up on Airbnb, and they started taking reservations. And then the pandemic hit, and they got spooked. They got scared, and they ended up listing their property. I remember this property was listed on Mother's Day morning. It was raining. I drove over to the property. I always go direct to the listing agent, and I find out that she's also the seller. And tour on this property is gorgeous. And there's a garage below the ADU, which happened to have 9-foot ceilings, a level slab. It had access to electricity and plumbing. And I thought, man, you could potentially convert this into a third unit. And so I asked her, I said, hey, do you have a lot of tourists set up? And she's like, none today, because it was Mother's Day. But there was a lot of tourists scheduled for the next day. And I said, hey, I'll give you whatever you want for it. Let's lock it up right now. So I ended up tying it up that night. Got another no money down loan. I was able to wrap the closing costs into the deal. I was able to all the furniture was negotiated into it. So it was really just a turnkey short-term rental. And so those two deals created 3 listings for me. And that was basically my start into short-term rentals. I really just backed into it. I did take a risk because I didn't really know what I was doing. But I think the takeaway is I took action and I just bet on myself. I'm like, you know what? I'll figure it out. If the economy does go the other route, I'll figure it out, and I did. And those two properties have been grossing $30,000 a month, almost every single month, like clockwork since I bought them.
What's your expenses per month?
Expenses, everything all in. I'm probably closer to like 18. So that thing's been paying, closer to about $12,000 a month in net cash flow, which is crazy.
That's between the 3 rentals or just that last one?
That's between the 2 rentals, but one of those properties has two listings on it. So it's 3 total listings.
Right. That's great, man. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. I got so many questions, man. Sorry to just kind of budge in here, but no money down. What's happening? How are you getting these no money down? Are you a vet? What's going on?
Yeah. So anyone can qualify for this loan product. So there is a credit union out there called Navy Federal Credit Union. You don't need to be a vet to join. You just have to either know someone that is a member. But if you don't know someone, you can find someone that's a member and you can go in there and say, hey, this is my girlfriend or boyfriend. Can we open a joint account? And at that time, you're a member, and then you will qualify for all these same loan products.
Wow.
Yeah. Like the reason I know this is because I have an ex-girlfriend. She's not a vet. I was a member. And because we were living together at the time, we did have a joint account. Well, we're not together anymore. And she has all her own accounts and she has access to all those loan products. And we're not even together.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's the real winner.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Cool, man. So wait, you said the HOA allowed you to, they were cool with the short-term rentals?
Yeah. So because it was a new construction, the HOA did allow it. And I reached out to a real estate attorney just to double check before I closed on the property. And he said, because you are an original owner, there's some statute in the law. I don't even remember what it was, but he showed it to me. And he said, as long as if the HOA was to vote against the short-term rentals in the future, as long as you don't agree to that change, you are grandfathered in. And so I thought that was great. So it gave me the confidence to move forward. But that said, that's not going to change. Like if the city decides to regulate, that's not going to change that. It's just pertaining to that particular building.
Right. Did you have like a contingency plan, like in case the city said, all right, we're shutting it down? Like, could you still make it all happen?
Well, the city is regulating. So they're opening up a lottery system starting, I think October 2nd. So here in like a week. And
what are they doing?
They're going to limit the number of short-term rentals to in the city of San Diego to 1% of the housing supply. So to put that into perspective for your listeners, is currently like 16,000 or so short-term rentals in the city of San Diego. It's going to cut it from 16 to like 6,000. And so there's a good chance that I'm not going to get a permit for a lot of those properties, but we're going to see how it shakes out. But you have options, right? And as an entrepreneur, you'll figure it out. So obviously, one, get a permit. That's great. It's going to bring more demand to your property. If you can legally operate when they slash the supply. If not, I'm going to continue to operate. I don't know if the city has the wherewithal to regulate it. There's a lot of cities in America right now that regulate short-term rentals, but I know people that have been operating for many, many years and no one stopped them. And so I will continue to operate until they shut me down. And at that point, I can pivot to 31-day stays here in San Diego. Short-term rental is defined for anything 30 days or less, but there's nothing stopping you or illegal about doing 31-day stays. And there's a big demand for it. You won't make as much. Yeah, you won't make as much, but there's a lot of travel nurses out here. There's a lot of people that want to come out here and stay in San Diego temporarily, but they don't want to do a 12-month lease and they want a place that's furnished. So that's another option. And, I can also sell and move that equity to other markets in the country.
End of the day, just sell it and move on to another market that's open to. That's awesome, man. Man, I want to get a drink with with you, man. We're gonna be in San Diego Sunday.
Let's do it, man.
Let's grab a cocktail, man. We have so much in common. It's cool. It's cool.
Nice. Yeah, I'm down to grab a drink whenever.
I'm so sorry. I'm like deep in like the short-term rental game. I'm super jacked on it. I love it.
Yeah.
Even though I was like literally just on the phone, like yelling at a contractor right now. It's like all part of the fun for me. $14K in furniture to furnish that thing. What's the square feet? What was that unit like?
Yeah, so that one was just under 1,000 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I just did cheap furniture, nothing too crazy. It looks nice. We have over 30 listings now, and like some of these listings, I mean, our clients are putting $90,000 into a design. So it really just depends. We're putting, like, my Scottsdale property, I spent $160,000 on that furnishing. So, I'm spending a lot more on it. But early on, the first one, I was like, you know what? This is what I can afford. Let's do it.
That was your okay. So $14K that was your first one. It was pretty much turnkey. That was pure furniture. That's appliances. That's couches and beds.
Yeah. Nice. It was a 2-bedroom condo. I put a sofa in there, coffee table, some bar stools, some cooking. Actually, I use cooking pots and pans from my own place that I own. I just kind of move those over. I don't, since I moved out of that condo, I've been in this apartment since, a 1-bedroom apartment. I don't even have cooking utensils. I don't have pots and pans because they're in that short-term rental, and I haven't cooked since.
So Vince and I are doing something crazy right now. We're just hitting. I'm basically setting up a new short-term rental.
Okay.
Probably till the day I die, as long as we're not shut down by the city and all that. But basically, I'm actually moving my personal, probably most of my apartment right now is actually going into this recent rental that we're just about done with and set up. So I'm gonna have like no furniture, except for maybe like the bed and some kitchen items, and then everything else is going into a different rental. So we've got all this. It's like I'm like shuffling things around. So a lot of my apartment is actually going to be in this new rental, which is a 2-bed, 1-bath. It's going to be interesting because it kind of matched the aesthetic. It kind of worked out. Plus, it's going to save me some money. Like, I'm going to get a cheap couch from my brother for my place for the time being. I'm kind of like shuffling all these things together. There's a lot of pieces because Vince is an insane person, and I happen to make the mistake of showing him what our revenue was for this little ADU we've been working out with about 6 months now.
But I love that you jumped in and you're like, hey, we're going to figure this out, right? Yeah. And a lot of people would stop right there and be like, well, I don't know if I have the money to afford all the furnishing, and what if this happens, and what if that happens? And there's a million risks with anything you buy, and a lot of people would stop right there and not move forward. And so I love that you're moving forward. You're like, hey, I'll figure it out. You're betting on yourself, and that's the main takeaway. I mean, look at that first condo that I bought. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I backed into it. I'm like, you know what? Let's just buy it. And let's see what happens. And you know what? I figured it out. And fast forward to today, like now we have over 30 short-term rental listings, and none of that would have happened had I not taken action on that first condo and bet on myself.
Yeah, man. So you said something that resonates with me, and I want to make a point for anyone listening. This is one of the most valuable things, and it's so simple, but and you said it perfectly. You just said, you know what? I was taking a big risk. I pulled this money out of my 401k, blah, blah, blah. And I did this. And I just, what he's really saying is, yeah, he took a big risk. But what you did is you said, I was comfortable betting on myself. I knew that I could figure it out. I'm resourceful. If I have to work 16, 18-hour days to figure it out, I'll do it. That's what it takes, is being willing to make those sacrifices. That's why you're crushing it, bro.
Absolutely.
Beyond everything.
And before all these like real estate deals, if you would have told me, oh my God, like I'm in a deal and like the short-term rental regulations are changing in San Diego, I might not be able to operate, I'd be like, fuck, like what am I going to do? But now I'm like, dude, it's happening in a week from now. And it doesn't even faze me because I know I'll figure it out.
Yep.
Let's see how it shakes out and I'll figure it out. Like I love pivoting. I love problem solving. And now I have the confidence in myself to move forward on a lot of stuff because I know I'll figure it out.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Vince, what do you got, baby? Sorry, I kind of took over with the short-term questions.
Well, no, it's good because I want to hit about Fortune Cribs and stuff too. So, but I want to go back to your timeline. So you were doing, did you do more of those no money down, and do they still offer those, the Navy Federal Credit Union?
So after I got that second no money down loan with them, I was tapped out. I also had a home equity line of credit with Navy Fed, so my debt to income was out of whack, and so there was no way I was going to get any more loans with them. I did do another deal that was close to no money down. It was an 8-unit property in Cincinnati. I had no money at the time. All my money was tied up in other real estate projects, and a broker that I had bought the 11-unit with had brought me this deal, and he said, "Hey, Rich, this is a really good deal. You should check it out." The uncle had owned this property for like 35 years, took really good care of it. He wanted to retire. He gifted this property to his son, and his son wanted nothing to do with the property. He just wanted to make a few bucks and sell it. And so I think he gifted this property to his son for like 130,000, and his son was wanting to sell it for just over 200. And so I said, okay, let's lock it up, and I'll figure out a way to buy it down the road, right? You know, you lock it up and you got all the time in the world to figure out a way to buy it. And so I just went out and I started shopping private lenders. I'm like, hey, I got this deal that's under contract for $207,000. I think it's easily worth closer to $400,000. Do you have any lending options for me? And I was able to find a private lender that was able to lend. She goes, I'll lend to you 70% of whatever the appraised value comes in at. So we got an appraisal. The appraisal came in much higher. I ended up, after closing costs and everything, I ended up buying that deal for just $7,000 down.
How did you find this deal?
The same broker who sold me the 11-unit had brought me this deal, and I obviously had, continued that relationship over the short term, and he just decided to bring it to me, and so that was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I assumed that the 11-unit was in Indiana, but I guess it was in Cincinnati.
No, it was this one. The 11-unit was also in Cincinnati. The 8-unit was also in Cincinnati as well. And that deal, it's crazy that the property manager, like, literally, we just been turning over the rent roll, and she's just doing like carpet cleaning, replacing the broken appliances with like refurbished appliances, fresh paint, very minimal turns. And she's taking the rents from that property from $450 to $800 by just putting in bare minimum stuff. So we turned the whole rent roll. I started bonusing her out. Here's another good one. I started bonusing her out for all of the units that she would, fill at $800. And so it created an alignment of interest. And then I went to refinance the property because I had a short-term loan on it. It was a private loan. Went to refinance it, and sure enough, the appraisal came in north of 400. Got a loan on it, and I ended up pulling a nice chunk out of it. So that was a nice little deal that I have no money in, and I actually got paid for. Yeah.
Daunting, bro. Daunting.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I actually wanted to pivot your story towards, because you guys have very similar to what Drew and I have, but we're just a few years behind. Like, like you start off with the money, you sell everything you got, and then you leverage. But very soon you find out, okay, well, I can't sell my kidney, like I'm out. So you need to raise capital. So how did that happen, and where does multifamily take off, and beers and deals, how do they fit in?
Yeah, absolutely. So beers and deals came to fruition before we even bought the 32-unit. And remember, I told you I was educating myself. I was going to a lot of networking events, and that was one of the events that I was attending. And it used to be a different host that was hosting it. And the host, I became friends with them. It was a couple. They came to me one day and they said, "Hey, Rich, we don't want to host this anymore, but we think you should take it over." And so I said, "Great." Like, the guys and I were wanting to start a meetup, so I was like, "Perfect, we'll take it over." So that's how that came to fruition. But to answer your question, the 32-unit property we bought, and then shortly after that, we're like, "Hey, let's raise money and go syndicate a deal, but let's bring on some sort of guidance from someone that's already been there and done it, so we don't make a mistake." And so at that point, we went and got mentorship. We paid for coaching. I highly suggest people pay for coaching if it's the right fit. There's a lot of coaches and gurus out there that I think there's a lot of people out there that are more interested in building their coaching business than they are buying assets. And those weren't the type of coaches that we wanted to work with. But we had a group on our podcast, and they had transacted north of 8,000 apartment units. they didn't have like a, a formal coaching business. And we liked that. And we were able to, work something out with them, and they offered us an opportunity to work together. And we ended up doing a couple larger deals with them in the Carolinas. And they were the ones that taught us, how to underwrite, how to raise money, how to operate these deals. And, when you do those kind of things, I think it just shortcuts your path from point A to point B.
Yeah, man, that's really key. I mean, I went to Jake and Gino. We just had Gino on the podcast a couple of weeks back. And I always try to spend a couple of extra dollars, go to those VIP things and all that stuff. But I was able to squeeze my way into these groups, and I'm now unofficially part of like the mentorship group. But I haven't paid Gino like $40,000. I just know the guys from the thing. Now I'm working on a 44 unit deal in Lakeland. It's crazy. Like it's how much you could do with just networking and stuff.
And I love that you said that. Like, you'll go network, you go to these live events, you'll pay the VIP. Like, my perspective has changed many times, but like right now, like, I will pay extra to fly first class. I will pay extra for the VIP. I will pay extra to, ride in a black SUV. And the reason is because when I do those things, you never know who you're going to sit down next to. I was on a flight last couple weeks ago to Miami, and I was flying first class. I sat down next to a high net worth doctor, and we ended up chatting the entire flight. And now she wants to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars with us. And so, I spent an extra $400 on that ticket, but I got an investor that wants to invest $300,000. And so, that lever, when you do those kind of things, you just never know what kind of opportunities are going to open up for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. We've really started to explore that concept as well. And we've had lenders in the past who are like, bro, I go to Equinox because I network. Like that makes it all worth it for me.
100%, man.
Yeah,
That's the name of the game.
The toll, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Getting around big players, getting around people that have money, and creating an audience. I think that's another big lever as well.
Yeah, it really expands your horizon. I like to say, like, I used to go to LA Fitness a lot, and then I started going to UFC gym now, and there's just the people are just different. Like in LA Fitness, people are like trying to not to die of diabetes. In like in a UFC gym, they're like, how can I kill this guy in 10 seconds or less? Like that's the game, right? So it's like fighting. It's just you just start meeting higher quality people. And I'm talking to this guy. I think Drew, you met him. What was his name? Dan Loggins. And I was like, Dan Rogers. And I was like, Rogers? And he's like, yeah, Kenny Rogers is my uncle. I'm like, what? It's crazy. Like all these high level people, and his wife's doing real estate. So I'm talking to them, but it's just, you start associating yourself with different quality of people, and you start thinking differently. The reason like Drew and I think differently is because, we chat with you and Sean and, and I was on your podcast too last year. It was 99 episode. And it just opens up your brain more. It's like, wait, he's just buying 32 unit. What does that even mean? Like, it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Our entire portfolio is 34 units. You just did it in one deal.
Yeah. Right. And it's all perspective, right? Like, early on, I thought, wow, 11 units was really big. And now, like, 32 units seems small to me. But also, like, in terms of like how you talk about money, and you can gauge a lot about how successful someone's going to be when you hear their perspective and how they talk about money. So like, I don't know, like when I used to look at money, like back when I was working the government job before I got into real estate, like I thought $10,000 was a lot of money, but now, I might go drop that at a UFC fight to go watch Conor McGregor in the 5th row because you never know who I'm going to sit next to. And that doesn't seem like a big chunk to me anymore.
Plus your 5th row for one of the greatest fighters of all time.
Right. Exactly. But it's all perspective, right?
Yeah. By the way, Vince, we're going to, you're definitely invited. We're going to Vegas, Rich. We're going to Vegas for Vince's birthday around October 15th. I'm flying in on the 13th.
Okay.
And guess who sprang for first class, Vince?
No, you
thought I was kidding, man. Like, even like it's Vegas, so it's not even that much, but still. Yeah.
I love it. Is there a fight that weekend?
Like, I love to travel, and I just got back from Dallas not long ago, and just like, I don't know, man. I can't be crammed in those little spaces and sit next to a guy who can barely tie his shoes. I think we flew first class one time from Hawaii, and you met some chick. Vince, what was her thing? What was her deal?
She was also a doctor in Newport Beach, but yeah, that
Right.
was the story. Yeah. Then yeah, I just upgraded all of these guys to
Yeah.
first class, just flying back because we had his mom and everyone. We just want to treat him,
Yeah.
Good time.
Yeah, but the case in point to Rich is like you met a doctor as well, sitting
Yeah,
next
I
to
met
you.
a doctor too. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was actually chatting with her. Rich, I wanted to ask you, so the thought leadership platform that you guys have, so the multifamily takeoff, how did you start that? When did you start, and how does that help you with capital raising?
Yeah. So we launched that podcast in December of 2019. It's a weekly podcast, as you know. And we initially launched that podcast thinking it's going to be strictly multifamily. But now we are rebranding the podcast to bring on guests in all different asset classes within real estate, hospitality, retail, office. We want to bring on a variety of guests and kind of throw out a bigger net. But it definitely was. It's definitely very like resourceful in terms of credibility in raising capital and growing your business in that sense. There's a lot of even friends and family that invest with you early on. It's hard to really put a number on it, but you got to think how many friends and family would have not invested with you early on had you not had your podcast. They might not be a listener every week, but for them to see you consistently putting out content and interviewing bigger players in the space, it gives them the trust in order to move forward and invest with you. And so I think that's a big lever. But also, like, you never know who you're going to meet, right? Like, we've had people reach out through the podcast and invest money with us in deals, and we barely knew these people, but because they're listening to you, it's like you don't really have to jump on a call and do. I had one person basically just wire money in. They had been listening to the podcast. We didn't even jump on a call. It was a couple emails back and forth, and that was it. So that was a pretty powerful thing. But I think, I think that goes hand in hand with growing your brand. I mean, like, I think in today's climate, and I think it's going to continue to go this way. I had this epiphany. I was traveling recently. If you look at the top entrepreneurs out there, most of them are not great business people or businesswomen. They have audiences. I'll give you an example. Conor McGregor, right? We're talking UFC. He started Proper 12 Whiskey. Proper 12 Whiskey is valued at almost $1 billion. He's not a businessman. He's a fighter, but he's got an audience. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, he's got a tequila brand that's valued at $4 billion. He's not a business guy, but he has a big audience. And here's the best one. Kylie Jenner, the Kardashians. Kylie Jenner, she became a billionaire at age 20. She knows nothing about business, but she's got an audience. And so people are not watching their news anymore on the TVs. They're getting their news on their cell phones and on social media. And so if you can figure out a way to get attention and build an audience, and then you have some back-end products to monetize it, you can make more money than God.
Yep. Yeah, it's so funny as a business owner myself, between AnVi and I have a music school here and all this, but I used to think it was like 50-50. It's like, okay, 50% of it's marketing and exposure. 50% of it's like the actual business, the service or product.
Yeah.
And the older I get, the more experience I get, the more I'm like, I mean, I'm sitting at 80-20 in my opinion. I think it's 80% marketing, brand, exposure, 20% service.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like the window narrows more and more. Of course, have a good service, have a good product, of course.
Yeah.
But man, if no one knows about it, then what's the point?
Look at Louis Vuitton, for example. They charge $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a handbag that costs $200 for them to make. And why do people pay it? It's not because it's the most affordable. It's not because it's waterproof. It's because of the brand.
Yeah, sure, it's quality, but man, they've just somehow managed to create that brand, that high quality, that tying it with like the top tier, top echelon kind of.
But I think one of my like my perspective has changed in the sense that, like, I think early on I was like, oh man, we're gonna build this like company brand, right? We're gonna build this company brand. But I think the personal brand is a much bigger lever. People don't want to follow a company. They want to follow a person. They want to follow a personality. They want to follow someone that has an opinion.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes it real. It's authentic. It's one of the reasons why it's been hard for me to kind of find the right person to do sales in this business that I had at school. Because whenever I'm on the phones, it's just so much easier because I kind of am the brand. It's my name on the building, and I believe in it. I know it. It's easy for me to talk. When I'm selling, I'm not selling. I'm just having a conversation and just connecting a great teacher with a great student potentially, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with real estate. Whenever I'm doing the Airbnb and I'm on there, I'm basically just, I'm constantly building this brand, building the reviews. We're creating like an overall theme. Like every
Yeah.
place is kind of got the same kind of theme and overall, which is great for my cleaners. Because if we like, you know, run out of something here or we need to replace that, we can always kind of, we do this trade-off. But yeah, and building that brand is so huge, and having that personal touch. I've got automated systems now where it just kind of automatically messages based on what they're asking and saying and checking her out, which is nice. But I still make the point to kind of like have that extra touch of just like, hey, what's up? How's your day going? By the way, my contractors are going to be on site today. They're not going to make a whole lot of noise, but I hope you're well. Let me know if I can do anything for you at all and bring you something.
Yeah.
You know, bring you some
Absolutely.
breakfast. And no one ever takes me up on stuff like that, but just putting that human touch that like I actually care, that is so important. You know, it's going to take you farther than a faceless business, if you will.
Yeah, people love the personal touch, but man, like I don't know, like our perspectives are always changing as we grow, self growth, but also grow our portfolios, business and real estate. But like my perspective has changed on many levels recently. Like another one is I used to really want cash flow, but now I'm kind of like my perspective has changed in the sense like now I'm more interested in deals that have a lot of equity growth. I'll give you an example. So that Scottsdale deal that I bought in January of this year, I bought it full renovation, bought it for about 2.5, did a full reno, put a lot of money into it, almost $800,000. So all in for about 3.3, no cash flow for 6 months, fully renovated. And it just appraised for 4.89 million. So basically created $1.5 million of equity out of thin air in 6 months, but there was zero cash flow. I could have taken that same money in January and bought a deal that was turnkey and just furnished it and started cash flowing it. Let's say it would have paid $5,000, $6,000 a month in cash flow. Well, that's $50,000, $60,000 a year in cash flow. How many years that $60,000 a year in cash flow would it take to make that 1.5? You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. Equity is what gives me that like peace of mind. Like, you know, if like we just had to, you know, spend a little bit of money on some plumbing issue, and then there's of course setting up. The Airbnbs are always costly, and since we're doing like multiples at a time, it can be stressful, but I still sleep a really solid 8 hours at night because I know that at the end of the day, we're sitting on millions of dollars of equity, and it just gets better, and the juice gets sweeter every single day. So worst case scenario, we pull a lever, we sell something, cash out, cash is back, you know, and that it just, that equity side is what we started with, and that's kind of all we had. Every time we thought we were going to have cash flow, it was like, oh, you know, the tenant didn't pay, COVID, you know. And that's what got us into the short-term rental. I want to travel back in time for a second. Your first deal was an 11-unit deal in Cincinnati. Can you kind of walk us through that deal, like a deal breakdown? How is your first deal 11 units? I can't.
So $350,000 bought it for. It was a C-class property. I think it's like $31,000 a door.
Okay.
In a pretty decent area of Cincinnati, but Cincinnati's just dirt cheap. Near the University of Xavier in a neighborhood called Norwood, and bought this deal for $350,000. 4 people moved out right when I bought it. We started renovating those units. I put $4,500 or so into each unit, just kind of cleaned it up, bought it from a slumlord really, and just slowly turned over the rent roll. And I hired the wrong property manager to start with, ended up bringing in a different one like 2 months later. Best decision I ever made. They've been great since, still work with them now. They actually lend me private money now, which is really cool. Wow. They're pretty badass. Anyway, so I ended up refinancing that deal about a year and a half later and pulled out all my money plus some, and still on that asset, and cash flow is about $2,100 a month now.
That's great. That's all you, no partners?
That's just me.
So how does your mind go from cool, let's do real estate and just figure this out to 11 units. Like how does that? So for us, we've been doing duplexes and triplexes, eating them for
Yeah.
breakfast and dinner, right?
Yeah.
I'm closing on now we're doing more like homes here in Orange County, where like ADUs and stuff. So
Yeah.
but the point is I mean, we weren't thinking at all close to that, or at least I wasn't. I mean, our first deal was a triplex and definitely probably more of a D kind
But
of
you guys are
neighborhood.
buying stuff here in California, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
if you look at it that way, like your first deal was probably much more than 350,000.
It was
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
actually, I was just gonna,
And
I just did
so
the math in my head. Yeah, you're right. It's
so
about
to
the same.
me, it's not really about, people are like, oh, like how many units do you have? Like to me, it's not really about the number of units. It's like, how much real estate do you own, right? How
Right.
big is that deal you're buying? So,
Yep.
you could buy a 10 unit deal here in the beach in San Diego and pay $8 million, or you go buy 11 units in Cincinnati and for 350, right? So it's all perspective. But I think for me at the time, I was like, I want to buy as many units as I can afford to buy. And I was like underwriting some deals all over the country, and I felt like the cash flow was strongest as I got towards the Midwest. And I felt like at the time, me being new, just getting my feet wet, like, okay, if I go into the Midwest, it's kind of hard to lose. And so let me get my feet wet there first. And that's kind of what I did. Now, am I looking to buy deals in the Midwest? Not really. I'm looking for deals that I can get these big pops on, such as Scottsdale.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Now, when you bought that deal in Scottsdale, did you kind of already see what's happening with the market? Did you kind of almost predict the equity pop, or was it just like a nice coincidence? You already knew the equity was great, but you didn't know it was going to be that great. What was
I thought the ARV was going to be 3.5, maybe 3.7. So when you refinance a luxury home, they require 2 appraisals. So I actually went out there. I met both appraisers and walked them through the property. I sent them a 5-minute video recording of the comps I'm looking at, what we did with the renovation, and what number I needed. And I was pushing for like 3.8. I was like, hey, if we get 3.8, 3.9, that'd be great. And I thought that was aggressive. So the first appraiser calls me a week later. He goes, you need to be at 3.8, right? And I was like, yeah. He goes, I got you at 4.89. I was like, holy cow.
Whoa.
And so then he goes, let me know what the other appraisal comes in at. So I text the other appraiser, because they're going to go with the lower of the 2 numbers, right? So if the first one comes in at 4.89, but the second one comes in at 3.7, they're going to use 3.7. So I texted the other appraiser and I said, hey, just so you know, the first appraisal came in north of 4.8. I didn't get a response. 2 hours later, I get a call from the lender. He goes, hey, that appraiser turned you in for influencing the evaluation. And so I said, okay, what does that mean? He's like, oh, it's no liability to you, but we just have to get another appraiser. So they schedule another appraiser. I'm like, I'm not going to fly out to Scottsdale again. But what I did was I emailed that appraiser the first appraisal. And I said, hey, I attached something to help you with your research. Let me know if there's anything else you need. And he was like, thank you. And so anyways, the moral of the story is I thought it was going to come in at 3.5, 3.6, and it came in at 4.89. And so you just never know, man.
Even the second appraiser came in at 4.89.
The second one came in pretty close. Yeah.
Wow.
It was in the mid 4s. Yeah, it's crazy.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, man. You're you're just a hustler. I get you, man. I see you. Yeah, we have a lot in common. You have a lot in common with Vince and I, man. I feel like every time Vince, I apologize, like I'm not keeping up with everybody, but we interviewed one of your partners, right?
Yeah, Sean DeMartel.
Sean, yeah. I feel like even with Sean, I was like, we just need to hang out. Like, you guys are cool guys. We kind of are you guys are definitely like here compared to where we're at, but we're kind of, we're getting there. And especially these conversations are really helping that. So thank you for your time. But man, we'll be in San Diego Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Let's do something.
For Bigger Pockets?
Yeah, are you there?
Yeah, I'll be there, my man. I'll be there. So I guess I'll hang out with you guys there.
Yeah. We'll see you at Nova Sunday night then. We'll be there. That's
what venue is that at? Do you know?
Nova.
NOLA. I've never heard
Nova.
of that.
NOVA. You know them, bro. It's at Gaslamp. It's a huge nightclub.
Oh, it's the old Omnia.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. I was gonna say I've lived in downtown San Diego for 6 years. I'm in the mix here. I've never heard of this place, but okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, we'll have some friends coming too. I know we only have 6 minutes to it. I want to hit you real quick on how do you differentiate your deals between yourself and then Pack 3 Capital? So how do you like split? Like if you raise some money, Are you using it for your deal? If you don't need it, do you share it with everybody else?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. If we do a deal where we need to raise money, that's a pack 3 deal. But if we are using our own money to fund it, then we buy it on our own. It's as simple as that.
What if you got money from your mom? Where is it going? Do you try to fund pack 3, or is it your fortune?
Oh, like if a family member invested into a deal, then it would be a pack 3 deal. Yeah, I don't raise money for my own deals. I for my own deals I do personally, I don't raise money for.
Oh, I see. So you just have your own money doing the deals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Cool.
Like this Scottsdale property, like when we close this refi, I'll get a chunk my way. I'm not going to use that money to buy a pack 3 deal. I'm going to use that money to buy another deal on my own.
That makes sense.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I encourage my partners too. I'm like, hey, go own real estate on your own, build your own wealth on the side. Let's use pack 3 capital as a vehicle to fund our own deals, because at the end of the day, the goal is to own your own real estate too.
Yeah,
you know
sure.
what I mean?
Yeah. Drew and I kind of figuring out things to kind of, tapping into different money and stuff.
Yeah.
The last question I had for you, I know we only have a couple minutes, is what do you think of the market, man? You think we should hold out, wait another year, 2 years, 5 years to buy the next deal?
Yeah. Well, here's what I think. So I think there's a lot of talk out there and people are like calling for this big crash. I don't think it's going to happen. I'll tell you why. So, the interest rate environment right now is very, very high, but this is temporary. Rates are going to go back down. They're not sustainable at this level for very long. And so they will go back down. And I know when they will go back down, there's going to be a lot of buyers that enter the marketplace and things are going to get bought up. The supply and demand issue, there's a shortage of housing. There's a shortage of rental units, apartment units. There's a shortage of housing across America in most major markets. That's not going to stop because of this interest rate environment. And the last point I'll make is people forget they printed 40% of our economy's currency in the last 48 months. I'm sorry, last 24 months, last 2 years, 40%. So when you inject that much money into the economy in 2 years, it makes it almost impossible for pricing to get cheaper. Almost impossible. And then you throw in the fact that we have these like demographic shifts occurring right now. The baby boomers are not dying off. They're not selling their homes as early as people thought they would. And then you have these millennials that are starting families. They're buying homes. And then the group behind us, what are they, Gen Z, Gen Y? They're even bigger. And they're moving out of their parents' house for the first time. And they're going and renting apartments. And so there's all this tailwind and pent up demand and a shortage of supply and 40% more money in the economy. I don't see how there's going to be a big crash. It's just unfathomable to me. It's easy for people to say it when the stock market's down and interest rates are high and transactions have slowed down. It's easy for people to say, oh, there's a big crash coming. We're going into a recession. But I guarantee you, as soon as those interest rates go back down, and they will go back down in the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to see another tear in the market. I guarantee you that. So I almost look at this opportunity now where I'm not buying risky deals. You could have said the Scottsdale deal was risky, but you know what? It worked out. I'm buying good assets right now. That's it. If I can find a good deal where I can add value, I'm going to buy it right now. I'm not going to be afraid.
So if there's someone out there listening and they're like, bro, we haven't done the first deal, it is really scary for them to get in. How else would they get in other than like partnering with someone like you or us or whatever, someone, right? Like, is that even a way for them to get in now, or do they have to partner?
And this is for what's their money situation?
Let's say they got 50 grand or something. They just don't have too much, but they could put like money down to buy a house hack or something.
Yeah, I mean, I would always try to go get a no money down loan and go buy a short-term rental.
Yeah,
control
it. Do that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they got the ability to qualify, that's what I would do. Go get your feet wet with your own property, and when you have a short-term rental, it's like running your own little business, and you learn so many things. And if you make a mistake, it's your money. It's not someone else's.
You heard it here, guys. Buy a no money down deal, short-term rental. That's your first deal.
I would also put a little asterisk with that advice. You got 50 grand, and that's good advice for sure. Buy something, no money down, short-term rental. Absolutely. But you guys are so high level, you're forgetting that 99% of the population has no idea how to do any of those things. There's zero skill sets. Knows nothing about markets, deals, anything. Even if they bought their own primary res, they know nothing. So they're most likely going to get their face caved in. So I would say, educate yourself, get mentorship, talk to people who have already been doing it and stunting way longer than you have. And if you feel overwhelmed, don't do the deal by yourself. Partner with somebody. Don't be greedy. Find somebody who knows how to do it and make the deal work. But definitely get involved either way. That's what I would say, just to kind of, yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Rich. Rich, did you have final words before you give out information on how people to contact you?
Yeah, I'm super active on social media. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is at Rich, RICH _Sommers, SOMERS. And if you want to learn more about my companies, you can check out fortunecribs.com or pack3capital.com. And I'm also launching my own show here shortly. Should be dropping in about a week or two, and that's called the Rich Sommers Reports. So excited for that.
Oh, where is it going to be on?
Gonna have our own YouTube channel, and it will be on Apple, Spotify, all that sort of stuff. But it's geared around bringing on bigger name guests who are self-made real estate investors, entrepreneurs, athletes, anyone that's self-made, that's made a big name for themselves, in hopes to inspire others. And it's in person, more in-depth conversations, more like Joe Rogan style.